when you actually do like a side-by-side comparison, humans versus donkeys, it's pretty much the closest match of any creature in the animal kingdom. They have a steady, syncopated rhythm, go long distances, and can handle heat. You almost could not search the animal kingdom and find a better running partner.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 163 of the Running for Real podcast. Welcome back, or welcome to the Running for Real podcast. I'm excited you are here, and thank you so much for joining me. I know there are absolutely unlimited amounts of podcasts nowadays, and so I appreciate you and your loyalty for joining me. And I have a special one for you today. But firstly, last week we had Sanjay Rawal on, who is a film producer. He's been really successful, has won all kinds of awards. But we talked a lot about running in a different perspective, kind of how we can view our running as kind of a spiritual practice, and we can see it as so much more than just the act of getting out there and exercising. Now, as I said, it was a very spiritual episode, but it wasn't very much an enjoyable one. And Sanjay just gave me a lot to think about when going out for a run. Now, we kind of are following along that same vein today with my guest today, and I have not had him on the Running for Real podcast. I did have him on Run to the Top, but I'm really excited to have Chris McDougall, who is known by most of you as the guy who wrote Born to Run. He also wrote Natural Born Heroes, and this is his next book, and you are really going to enjoy it because it's a little bit different. It's actually about his journey taking in a donkey, learning to run with that donkey, which is called burro running or burro racing. And he's written a book about this experience, getting to know this donkey, what it's been like, and it's called Running with Sherman. Now, I ask him all the ins and outs, the logistics of this situation, how this works, and some things that you wouldn't think about. But then we kind of go on beyond this conversation. We talk a lot more about kind of purpose and what we as humans need, just kind of getting away from everything when you're feeling overwhelmed. It's a really great and just real and raw conversation. Chris is wonderful to talk to you. If you haven't already heard him talk or speak, you are going to absolutely love him after this. He is just a wonderful person and really gets you to think. What he says in this episode, which you're going to hear towards the end, really got me thinking differently about each and every run. So I think you're really going to enjoy this one. I'm looking forward to having you hear more about this one. But first, I just want to take a moment and thank Janji, Athletic Greens, and Body Health for sponsoring this episode. Let's get to it. Thank you to Athletic Greens for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. You have heard me talking about Athletic Greens, and friends, we are coming into the season we all need it most. It is horrible when you get sick. There's so many different things flying around right now, and we don't want it, do we? But Athletic Greens contains 75 whole food ingredients. You just put in a scoop in your water, shake it or stir it, and you have basically this insurance policy. You have something to protect you from, all this sickness, to protect you from what your diet is missing. I am typically not great at getting vegetables in during pregnancy, but I've really found Athletic Greens has made a huge difference. I can feel it. It prevents me from getting sick. If I do happen to get something, it lasts less than a day, and it's just really quick. You're going to get the 5 critical areas of health covered. It's this all-in-one supplement that actually, I promise you, doesn't taste bad. It's not a typical green powder. It tastes slightly pineapple, maybe apple-y, and I really enjoy it. And you, my friends, can get a $79 value pack, which contains 20 servings for free when you put in your first order. So if you have a goal race that you really want to go hit in January, February, March, April, any of those times, if you start taking Athletic Greens, you are giving your body this defense that it can fight off this sickness so that you don't end up Googling and ending up on my article, because it's usually one of the ones at the top, Googling what to do if you're sick the week of your race, because you do not want that happening. This will prevent that. This will fill in all the gaps of what you're missing with your nutrition. And as I said, you get a 20 serving travel pack for free. You get prebiotics, you get probiotics. It has everything. So go to athleticgreens.com/Tina. Don't wait any longer. Go protect yourself. Chris, I am so excited to be having you back on the podcast. Actually, this is the first time you have been on the Running for Real podcast. In the past, I interviewed you on the Run to the Top podcast, but I am excited we are chatting again. Thank you for making the time to be here today.
I'm excited. I'm making my debut. Once again, I could start all over again with you.
I know. And it's kind of sad to me that this is going to be episode 160 something. It's kind of sad that it's got to this point before I've had you on, but I'm sorry, my friend. That's not very good on my part.
I like that. No, it's okay. It's like a long drum roll before they hit the cymbals.
There you go.
I'm the cymbals. I had
to build it up, getting all the other guests out of the way so they could make way for you to come in.
That's it.
Yes. All
Goodbye,
right.
clutter.
Yes. So for those listening, most people will have recognized your name from Born to Run. And as I said, many of them will have listened to you on Run to the Top when I had you on to talk about both Born to Run and Natural Born Heroes. But that was 2015, April 2015. I just gave you, before we started talking, a quick recap of what has changed for me, which is a lot. But where have you been the last 4 years? Because I'm sure many of my listeners, unless they were like avid fans of yours who follow your social media, and actually even your social media went a little bit quiet. So what have you been up to?
Yeah, exactly. That. I think it's the best way to check my temperature is see what's happening or not happening on social media. So once I'm really at work, then I just go offline for like a year. And it's not even deliberate. I just don't even think about it anymore. I'm just immersed in what I'm working on. And then suddenly you emerge and have to communicate again. So yeah, what happened was almost exactly that time, about 4 years ago, we ended up very accidentally taking in a rescue donkey, a donkey that was held in a stall. And we got him out, and without any expectation on my part, I suddenly found myself in the world of animal training and human-animal partnerships and training this donkey how to be my running partner.
And so this wasn't planned. You have always been an animal person. You've always had a lot of animals. But how did this come about, Sherman coming, how did you end up taking him in?
Yeah, I correct you on one point. I've never always been an animal person. We recently sort of became animal people when we moved out to a farm in Pennsylvania. But previously, all my life, I lived in cities and never had animals around, never had cats, dogs, anything.
Really?
And then we moved out. Oh, yeah. This is all, I was a downtown guy all the time, all the time growing up. And as an adult, I lived in Philadelphia, Madrid, Lisbon. I was always in the company of at least sort of 2 million people at a time. And then we sort of abruptly moved to a farm way out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 17 years ago now. And it was a complete pole vault out of the city into serious Amish country.
What was the original reason for that?
Oh, it was impulse, basically.
Okay.
There's never really an original reason for anything I do. It's always like what I felt like doing at the time.
Okay.
And so we sort of got this idea like, hey, why don't we think about this? And we happened to find a house. We plunged in, literally went from downtown Center City, Philadelphia to an Amish farm village in a matter of like 2 months.
Yeah.
And then we kind of looked at each other like, what the hell did we just do? But even then we sort of gradually eased our way in. We sort of adopted a couple of stray cats. And then my wife got a hankering that she'd like to learn how to milk sheep. So we got a couple of sheep. And it was a very slow, easy process, but getting the donkey was a whole other departure because suddenly it's a big animal, it requires a lot of care. And then trying to train a donkey of all animals how to be a running partner, that's kind of like master class, like jiu-jitsu style stuff.
And was that, well, firstly, the move, having lived in Philadelphia and having driven through Lancaster while I lived in Philadelphia when I was driving, I can't remember where I was going, but I was going somewhere. That is quite the change there. You went through there. So, it's interesting to, having been someone who did live in Philadelphia, and remember going through it. I can't imagine what a transition that was. But, interesting how we do adapt to things. And maybe that's kind of where you were meant to be all along. Apparently it is, if you've adjusted and been there the last 17 years. But taking in Sherman, okay, you just said there that, you took him in and you immediately started thinking about training him for being a running buddy once you got him kind of to where he was healthy and able to do it. For the average person, I would imagine if some crazy situation came and they had to take in a donkey, running with that donkey would not be anywhere on their list of things they needed to think about. So how did you even know, was burro racing a thing when you even brought Sherman into the house, or had someone spoken to you about it? Like, where did the running with him come into it?
Yeah, even a donkey wasn't on the list of things to do, let alone running with a donkey. This is my daughter's whim. She was 9 years old. I made the mistake of saying, hey, what do you want for your birthday? The answer ridiculously was a donkey. I kind of knew why. We'd seen a woman riding a donkey on a trail about a year earlier. And I think that planted the seed in her brain of like, hey, you know what? Donkeys are kind of cool. They're like horses, but they're little. And maybe I can ride it to school and tie them up on the soccer field and that kind of thing. So that was what was running through her brain. And my initial reaction was like, dude, you're not getting a donkey. But then my second reaction was like, hey, you know what? That's kind of not a bad idea. So let me just ask around. And that's when we heard about a guy near here who had a donkey locked in a stall, and his neighbors are trying to get him to release it. And that's when we showed up, and we were able to persuade him to turn this donkey over to us. But the big hitch was he had been locked up and immobile for so long that his hose had grown so that he could barely walk. And the people who were helping us, heal this animal said, look, you got to get him moving a lot quickly, or else his digestive system is going to shut down if it hasn't already. So this is kind of, emergency physical therapy. You got to get him on the move and get him on the move now.
Okay.
And every day. So I'm kind of, what am I going to do? Like walk him in a circle every day? That's not going to work. And that's when I got the idea of like, what if I just take him with me every day when I go for a run? And I'd known about burro racing. I'd actually tried it once in Colorado, about 10 years earlier. I hated it. I thought it was stupid. I never wanted to do it again. But suddenly, I'm confronted with this life or death situation, which is like either you get this donkey to move or it's going to die in front of you. And me trying to figure out what am I going to do to get it to move. And that's when I started to connect the dots and figure, look, he's got to move. I like to run. What if we start training for this race together?
Okay, that makes a bit more sense. And, like you said, a good double whammy that you got to help him, but also kind of getting your training done within that. And just curious, why is burro racing, why donkeys specifically, just in general? Like, it could be horses, it could be, I guess dog, like even running with dogs isn't really kind of, you don't really hear people often racing with dogs. Like how did donkeys become the I guess the category that got their own category of racing?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because there are two answers. There's a historical answer and there's a biological answer. So the historical answer is that this all traces back to the 1800s, back when prospectors were roaming around the Rockies and looking for gold. And the rumor is that, or the myth is that someone would strike gold way up in the mountain and then quickly throw all their gear onto the back of their donkey and then run to the nearest town as fast as they could so they could file the claim and register as their own. So this happens over time. What you then have is a bunch of guys in a wild western town with like gold in their pockets and donkeys out in the street, time on their hands. So they start to bet each other. Like, I'll bet you $1,000 I can run over to Fairplay faster than you. You're on. Off we go. So these guys used to race across the mountains running. And they kept doing it until by 1951, burro racing became the official summer sport of the state of Colorado. It is literally in a category alongside of like baseball is pack burro racing in Colorado. But here's a really, I think, a really fascinating thing. So 1951 is the year of the first official world championship pack burro race. And I would submit this to you. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you know what is the oldest marathon in America?
No.
Technically, it would be Boston. Boston's been around since like 1890, whatever. However, Boston is only the oldest marathon if you're a dude, because until the 1970s, women were not allowed to run the marathon. Like old guys in like overcoats and cigars are like preventing Catherine Switzer from running the marathon. So you guys weren't allowed to run the marathon until the 1970s. But in Colorado, women were allowed to compete in the World Championship pack barrel race immediately from 1951 on. And the race was 27 miles. It was from Fairplay to Leadville. It was 27 miles at 12,000 feet, while holding on to a 1,000-pound donkey. So I would say that the oldest marathon for all Americans is actually the World Championship pack barrel race. So Boston can go stick it, That's their oldest real American marathon.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so this became a sport, and I love the fact that for over 20 years, while women were being told, no, you're going to hurt yourself, don't do it. Meanwhile, out in Colorado, they're doing a way harder race at 12,000 feet.
And were there a lot of women doing it? Like, was it a pretty high ratio of women doing it then?
Yeah. In the beginning, there's only like four people total who did this thing, but over time, it got to the point where 1 out of every 4 racers was female.
Okay.
And here's another really fascinating fact is that, I've had this hypothesis for quite a while that the sports that humans naturally evolved to do, not sports that dudes made up for other dudes to watch on Sunday, but sports that we naturally evolved as normal human challenges, those activities, the differences between men and women are pretty minimal, So you get into distance running, open water swimming, rock climbing, parkour, things which rely on stamina, adaptability, endurance, and cooperation. These are the things that humans are good at. And so when you see in ultra running, men and women are much more equal than they are in the sprints or soccer.
Yeah.
You see in open water swimming, who's the first person to swim Cuba to Florida, a 64-year-old woman. Rock climbing, you look up on a hill, it's either Alex Honnold or it's a 16-year-old girl. It's like they're almost at the same level. So it's the same thing in barrel racing, that some of the overall top champions year after year are women. They can beat the crap. You can put a 2:30 male marathoner out there against a 47-year-old woman, and she will kick the living shit out of them in a barrel race. Wow. I'm not sure if that's proper terminology on your podcast or not.
Yes, that would have been bleeped, but it's okay. We want you to be you, Chris. We do not want you to be covering who you are. All right. So for someone who's struggling with the logistical aspect here of how do you run with a donkey? Do they go in front of you? Do they go behind you? Are they around your, do you have a strap around your waist like you would with a dog? Or for someone who doesn't get it, how does this work?
So, it's a fascinating thing. So that brings us to the second question of why. So the first one, the historical answer. Yeah. The biological answer is kind of this. So what's unique about donkeys, and I think this was just kind of an accident or not, but what makes them such great running partners and why they have their own dedicated event is that their gaits and pace and endurance is a really close one-to-one match with humans. So, donkeys can rock out for like 100K. They can do 50, 60 miles at a clip with no problem. They don't need a lot of water. They don't tend to overheat because they're desert animals. So when you actually do like a side-by-side comparison, humans versus donkeys, it's pretty much the closest match of any creature in the animal kingdom. Horses tend to be fly and die creatures. They go fast, but then they exhaust themselves and overheat. Dogs tend to be sniffing animals. They want to move around and explore. They don't move at a steady gait. They tend to overheat the way horses do. It's only donkeys that have a steady, syncopated rhythm that go long distances and can handle heat the way humans have. So in a way, you almost could not search the animal kingdom and find a better running partner than a donkey, with one key exception.
Thank you to Janji for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. I have told you how much I love this brand, and I am so excited to see so many of you trying out Janji products and loving them. They've been telling me how many orders are coming through, and it is just wonderful to see just how much you're loving them when you try them, because they really are amazing clothes. As I've mentioned, I love the split shorts. I love many of the tights. I love the tops. I love the tank tops, all of it. Everything I've tried, I've really enjoyed. And I just love the thoughtfulness of it. Right now, they have the Mexican collection, which is going to pay this homage to this vibrancy of Mexico that we all know and love. And it's just wonderful knowing they worked with a local designer to create the product. They also are giving 5% of their profits to clean water initiatives in Mexico. That is their current situation. And then they've also done other collectives in countries like Cambodia and Uganda and Bolivia. And I'm excited to see where the next one is going to be. Actually, that's a lie. I do actually know where the next one is, but I'm afraid I can't tell you. They have just come out with some accessories. I love their hats. You guys know I am a huge hat fan. And there's just so much on there that is a wonderful, well-made, made of recycled materials, and just really cute clothing. So I definitely recommend going to janji.com. Yes, they now own janji.com, and you can use code Tina Muir to get 10% off your order. I am absolutely loving it and loving that this is a sustainable company, a company that cares, and they genuinely do care. I am excited to share with you in the next few months some of the things that they are doing just to support me, to support people in the St. Louis community, as that is where they are from. This is just a wonderful company. Stop spending your money on companies that just don't give a crap about anyone but their bottom line. Go support Janji. They are wonderful people, and you deserve the best. Go use code Tina Muir for 10% off your order.
So when you actually do like a side-by-side comparison, humans versus donkeys, it's pretty much the closest match of any creature in the animal kingdom. You know, horses tend to be fly and die creatures. They go fast, but then they exhaust themselves and overheat. Dogs tend to be sniffing animals. They want to move around and explore. They don't move at a steady gait. They tend to overheat the way horses do. It's only donkeys that have a steady, syncopated rhythm that go long distances and can handle heat the way humans have. So in a way, you almost could not search the animal kingdom and find a better running partner than a donkey, with one key exception. And the problem is donkeys are also really similar to humans in their independence of thinking. So other creatures like dogs and horses, we've domesticated for tens of thousands of years to take our orders. You know, a horse will do what you tell it to do.
Yeah.
You know, horses have a flight instinct. When they're afraid, they take off and run. And that's why we're able to train them to like jump over fences and walls and things. A donkey is independent. It wants to make its own decisions, and it doesn't have a flight instinct. It has a lockdown instinct. So when they sense danger, instead of running away, they lock down and freeze. And that's why they have a reputation for being stubborn. Yes. So I mean, it's a really good trait. If you're up in the mountains, you want a donkey because you could, persuade a horse to make a mistake. If the horse stops on a mountain pass, you can whack it and it'll go forward. A donkey won't. It won't go forward until it's absolutely sure that the road is safe. And that's why they're really good up in the mountains. That's why you really want them up there, because they won't let you override their own security system.
Isn't also a horse, if it gets really scared and let's say you've fallen off or somehow lose control, it could just run off because, it's scared, doesn't really care in most cases, I would imagine, what you're doing, whereas a donkey will stand its ground, so it's not going to, go anywhere from you, so you shouldn't lose one another.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Again, so that's why you put in this really treacherous terrain, donkeys were valued. Up in the Andes, the Himalayas, the Rockies, even in desert areas. Like in the desert, if a horse gets scared, it's gone. You're never going to see it again. Yeah. A donkey gets scared, it'll freeze up and hold, and then you guys together can reconnoiter and decide what the next move is. So they have kind of limited uses. You only really want them in treacherous areas. So they're not fast. So horses sort of gain dominance for us because we tend to be more flat land creatures. We want to be able to cover long distances as fast as we can. But in treacherous high mountain areas, to this day, up in Afghanistan, the pickup truck of choice is a donkey. So that's what makes them good running partners, but also slightly difficult ones, because they will only run if they feel confident, which means they want to take the lead. They want to be out front. You're not going to lead a donkey. Donkey's going to lead you. Okay. And so it takes a lot of training and side-by-side cooperation before you actually make the donkey understand what it is you've been trying to do in the first place.
So you mean just kind of training it to be like, okay, I'm going to be holding on to this rope and you're safe and we're going to do this together. And the ground up ahead of you is safe, or what is it you're training them to do?
Yeah, and just from the very beginning, you take a donkey out of the meadow, you put a rope on its halter, and you say go, and let's say you goes, nah, no, I'm right where I am. So how do you even get started? And then when you are running, you're behind. So how are you guiding from the rear? And these are all things I had no clue how to do any of this stuff. How do you tell it where to go? You're running, now you want to take a right turn. How do you do that? Because you're behind it. So all those things were complete black box mysteries to me when we started this process.
And what is the answer there? Does it depend on donkey to donkey with kind of you create certain cues that go between the two of you? Is it like a tug on the rope? Like, how do you tell them, like you said, if you want to turn right or if you want to speed up or slow down, like with all the training, what are some of the things you've used?
So that's what became so cool about it. And this really became the genesis of this book, because when we first started working with this donkey, I didn't have a book in mind, didn't have any kind of story in mind. My only goal was to keep this thing alive. And over time, I realized that this whole question of animal-human partnerships was so rich and had such like a deep history that it led me to explore that as well. Like, how did humans ever get animals to partner with them? Mm-hmm. And then realizing how important it was. We tend to minimize. We can tend to think of, pets are just these things we keep in our backyard and walk once in a while we're checking our phones. But the fact is, we partner with animals for tens of thousands of years, and we learned a ton from them, and they learned a ton from us. And all that rich history was something I began to explore. Just to answer the question of, like, how the heck am I going to get this donkey to go run 29 miles with me in the mountains? But what was really cool was, so they took two top ultra runners, Max King and Ryan Sands, like the two top males on earth. And Solomon is their sponsor. And they took him out to Colorado because they thought, what we're going to do? We're going to do a showcase. We're going to take the two best ultra runners, and we're going to hire the two best racing burros, and we're going to get the number one equine trainer in the country. And we're going to put together the ultimate burro racing team. And so they Max and Ryan out there, and these guys are already super acclimated, so they handled the altitude in Leadville no problem. And they took these two amazing, like the two Secretariat racing donkeys, these two super fast, super strong donkeys. And they got this woman, Meredith Hodges, who's a great equine trainer, and they all work together. And then on race day, Max and Ryan go out and they get hammered, man. They just get shellacked. They were beaten by, I'm not kidding, by dudes in their 60s and 14-year-old girls. They finished I think Max was last and Ryan was third from last. And to those of us who actually train donkeys, we kind of look at this with smug satisfaction. Like, there you go, dudes, because you just didn't put in the time. You trained for 2 weeks as opposed to 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes. So, but for me, it was kind of this vindication of it's a lot harder than you think.
Yeah.
So what we did was we tried all kinds of things, but ultimately what worked was just constantly throwing more bodies at the problem. So we got other runners, like friends of mine, to run with us. And then we started throwing more donkeys at the problem. We went from one donkey to 2 to 3. My wife has a donkey now. Our friend Zeke was out here running with a donkey. And what finally worked was creating a herd. And even within the herd, there was this whole kind of hierarchy and distribution of labor, so that, the best running donkey is also the most timid. So whenever we saw something he was afraid of, like the color yellow, we'd have to bring another donkey who's smaller and isn't as fast, but is a lot braver. And then she would go to the front and then lead us past the yellow road sign. And then we'd change up the lineup again. There's all these little tweaks and adjustments that we had to do.
Yeah.
But what's so cool about it was when you're running with them, your brain is always clicked on and engaged.
Like just scanning for, things that may, I don't know, spook him, or if any of the donkeys are her, or things that could kind of present themselves as challenges? Or you mean kind of wow, just an appreciation, like a gratefulness for what you're doing and what they're doing?
Yeah, column A and column B. It's both.
Okay.
One of it is that when things are going well, you know what it's like when you're running with 4 or 5 people together And you start off and you're kind of chatting, you're all a little bit winded, you're warming up. And then all of a sudden you realize that no one's talking anymore. Mm-hmm. And you've all just clicked in and you're almost feeding off of each other's breathing.
Yeah.
And your footfall has synced in with the other 4 people.
Yeah.
And you have this moment of like, oh my God, this is like the best run ever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's mostly because you suddenly feel like you're being like carried along by everybody else's rhythm.
Yeah.
And so with donkeys, it's that times 10 because you're hearing not just like a rubber sole on the ground, but you're hearing a hoof and clacking along with a drum beat. And the lungs that are breathing next to you are like, the size of like a car tire. Mm-hmm. So you're hearing heavy breathing and whisking the tail. So there's all these deep bass notes that are accompanying your running. So those are the good parts. And then as far as the attention to detail, you're noticing and thinking about so much. Like here's even a little point. There's this one hill, this long hill we would climb. And for some reason, my donkey, who's the strongest runner, would always stop like halfway up the hill. Stop. And it wasn't breathing hard. And she wasn't having a problem. She would just stop. And I couldn't figure out why. Until I finally realized that when she heard me panting, she took that as a sign of distress.
Oh, wow.
And that something's wrong because this guy's breathing hard like people do when they're nervous. And so she would stop, like, what's going on here? And so I discovered that the only way I could get up the hill was by like getting my breathing under control. So I'd do a serious, like deep belly breaths, like a free diver before we started the hill so that I could kind of mask, my anaerobic threshold until we got to the top. And so just something like that made me think, oh, here's the hill. I got to start breathing, before the hill. I got to breathe, strong during the hill. And so it changed everything. Not only my attention to detail, but the way I would run up hills, which, sort of carried over into every other run I've done since then.
Yeah. Wow, this is all fascinating, really interesting stuff. And just, things you would never, most of us wouldn't think about this just on a general day-to-day because it's not something we've ever done or had experience with. But just, when you do start opening your mind up to and listening to you say all these things, it's just very interesting. And actually with donkeys, with the way that they run, I had a great question from one of my listeners, Sally, who said that in another interview, you had said that one donkey would sometimes speed up to stay in front of another, but also they'd stop to let the others catch up. So she wanted to know, do donkeys have a competitive nature at all when they race, or is it, up to the humans?
Yeah, that's the thing about it. It's a complete mixed bag. Completely mixed bag. And that's, again, one of the weird and fun complexities of burro racing. People who are way better at than I am, who've been doing it for decades, they run into the same problem. So you have the same runner who has the same training techniques, and the reaction of the donkeys, one to the other, would be very different. Just getting Hal Walter, who's an amazing burro racer, but one of his donkeys aged out, so he replaced it with a new donkey, and he felt like he'd never done it before in his life. He was like starting from zero, because his previous donkey had been competitive and actually wanted to be in front when the other donkeys to follow. And then his new donkey is a follower and never wants to be in front. And so Hal's racing toward the finish line, neck and neck, and he tries to go in front, and his donkey won't go. He just wants to stay back. So he had to reboot his whole thing. It was really cool, though, Tina, was the whole time I was working on this the past few years, my one big question was, okay, this is fine for donkeys, but what's the transferable skill? Like, what can other people get from this who don't have donkeys? And I actually got to see it in action really recently. I was just down in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there's a great shop down there called the Ultra Running Company, run by the guy named Nathan Lehman. Super dude. And so I was down there for an event, and Nathan and some of his buddies took me out for trail run at like the U.S. Whitewater Rafting Center that's down there in Charlotte. It has this amazing network of trails. So we're out for a run, and as we come up on the trail, we see a woman there with a dog. So we stop to let them pass, and then the woman sort of waves us in. She wasn't going anywhere. And as we approached her, she said, yeah, I'm done with this. I'm trying to run with my dog. I'm trying to teach him how to run. He's a lunatic. He's wrapping me in circles with the leash. I can't go anywhere. And I said, well, we can try what works with my donkey if you want to. We'll see how it works. And so I ended up like donkey training her dog. And I couldn't believe it myself. It worked beautifully.
Wow.
We ran for the next mile and a half, and his dog was on point. So basically all we did was, same thing we would do with our donkeys. I had my friend Nathan run in front, right in front of the dog's nose. I had the dog's owner, the woman, Marika, I think was her name, run right up next to the donkey's head, like just behind his head. And then I came from the rear. And basically what we did was we created a herd with the dog in the middle. And basically the dog looked around and goes, oh, I guess this is what we do now because everyone seems to be doing it.
Yeah. And
then I just kind of ran. I know, but it was almost silent. We weren't commanding the dog or giving it any instructions. We all just started to run. And the dog just like figured it out. Like, oh, okay, I get it now. And he just ran beautifully. And the woman was stunned. So, the reason I was there was I was giving a talk and a run that night at Nathan's store. So this was just in the morning. We were just out there for fun in the woods. And so at the end of our run, I said, hey, that was really cool. But she was stunned. She couldn't believe it that this dog ran nonstop for a mile and a half without a blink. And I said, hey, if you want to come around tonight, we're giving this talk at the Ultra Running Company. It'd be great to see you, and then we leave. And I'm thinking, okay, well, she's going on with her life. And I was just stunned. Like that night, she shows up. She'd never been to the store before. And she basically just came and said, thanks. She's like, I couldn't believe it. That was the day I said, I'm done with this. I'm never going to try this again. And that was the moment you guys showed up and you completely turned it around for me.
Sometimes that just happens, doesn't it? Right place, right time, and just meeting the right person who has what you need. I love when things like that happen, and how nice for you to feel, like you said, that you could transfer the things that you had learned and it worked. That's really cool. Now, you mentioned a minute ago that you said, my friend who's a much better borough racer than me, you said, what makes someone better? You just said about him being so experienced, but then when he got a new donkey, he felt like it was kind of starting again. So in some ways, is it actually that you as the human, or we as humans, are better or worse? Or is it that you just get to know your donkey and they get to know you so well that it's more, you grow so close in your relationship rather than you being good or better or worse at borough racing?
It's unfortunate that elite road racing has gotten so corrupted and spoiled because, I sort of harken back to the days of like Arthur Lydiard and Percy Cerutty. And, I just get the feeling that before things became so abusive and hyper competitive, that people who were experienced just had a very rich toolbox. They had a lot of different wrenches and hammers and screwdrivers so that when there was a problem, they had other tactics and training methods they could rely on. And I don't know if any of this is actually true, but I'm just kind of thinking back to those days, of the way, Lydiard and Cerutty would just kind of work quietly off in New Zealand and Australia, up in the beaches. And they were turning out these amazing runners who had long careers and seem to have very happy, well-adjusted lives and went on to greatness beyond, as opposed to where I seem to feel now, which is this kind of like resentment, short careers, injury, suspicion. It feels completely different worlds. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because that's what makes a great borough racer, is someone who realizes, every day is different. It's not just that the donkeys are different, but we'll take our donkeys out one day and it's as if they've never done it before. And then we'll go out the next day and they're champions. And then we'll go out the third day and they're presenting a whole different array of mind games on us. And what you learn is, okay, if this isn't working, I'm going to try that. That isn't working, I'll try something else. And what's really funny is that I feel now that, the reason why I wanted to try things with that girl's dogs, I felt like over the past 3 years, I feel like I've developed this really deep repertoire of possible techniques that I can use. Whereas when I started, I knew one or two things, and now I know 70 things. And to me, that's what it is. So that the donkeys will always be different. The situations will be different. But what makes it work is your patience and your adaptability. So one of the greatest borough racers of all time is this woman named Barb Dolan. She's just a monster, an amazing athlete, great person, But basically her strength is the fact is that she's just so creative. She has a thing where she has a donkey named Chugs that is a freaking lightning bolt. This thing is so fast. And Barb realized that she couldn't keep up with Chugs on these long descents. You know, you're doing like a 2-mile descent coming down from 12,000 feet. And you also don't want to pull back on the rope because that's sending a mixed message to the donkey. You're telling me to run, but you keep yanking on my head. Mm-hmm. So Barb developed this thing where she used to eat like power bars. And she used to share the power bars with the donkey. Mm-hmm. So the way to slow him down in the descent was she would just crackle a wrapper in her pocket. And the donkey would hear this, and the ears would fly up. And he goes, "Oh, it sounds like it's almost snack time." So he would slow down, realize it's almost time for a snack. That became her brake pedal, just a little.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? So, you know, I think so often in life, we're quick to frustration. We're quick to bring out the same hammer for every nail. Mm-hmm. And people like Barb realize, man, you just got to always be thinking and adapting.
Yeah. I think I've been I'm kind of turning this into a kind of parenting context of there's some things that I've learned with my daughter, things that work, things that don't, and some things may work on some days, and then on other days they absolutely do not. So yeah, I can definitely see what you're talking about there. And actually that leads into something I did want to ask you about, which is how has the running climate in general changed since we last talked, since 2015? Because I really struggle to tell if the running climate, like the way the industry has changed since I last spoke to you, because again, a lot has changed for me, or if I have just changed and everything is the same. So I'd love to hear your thought, because in my perspective, what I see is there's a lot more like fun events and ways to make it just about enjoying yourself and kind of doing something different. And there's all kinds of, you know, fun and different things. And I feel like this is a good time for, you know, your book Running with Sherman and just kind of introducing these new ideas that maybe wouldn't have gone down so well a few years ago. But again, I wonder, is that my perspective because that's kind of in the state I'm in? But what do you see as someone who, you know, has written books on the topics, has kind of, you've always taken kind of a step back approach of looking at things as a more holistic perspective. What do you see?
Oh, I see good stuff. You know, it used to be in the past that runners were trying to keep up with the industry. You know, the industry is always throwing all this like new technology at us and all this, you know, baloney about the different kinds of shoes. And now it's reversed, and the industry is trying to keep up with the runners. The runners have kind of left the industry behind, exactly as you pointed out. Like what's booming right now? Obstacle course races, ultra running, trail races, fun events, you know, there's been a huge surge in dog-friendly races. Now, bring your dog to the 5K. And so what I think happened was there was an era of fear where runners were kind of afraid. I'm not really a runner. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to do. I got to get the right shoes. And now people realize, yeah, you know what? I'm not afraid of anything. I don't mind going on a trail race. I'll try 100K. Why not? I'll bring my dog. Who cares? And so I feel like what's been cool and really exciting is that you're right, that joyfulness and the accessibility of running has really become contagious. And, you know, you see the numbers surging. And, you know, people feeling in the past, well, I got to be really special to try a marathon. And now people are like, the hell with it. I'll try it. I don't care. I don't care if I fail. And that's why the number of races are just booming everywhere. Yep. And particularly trail races where the emphasis is more on the fun and less about the time.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned about the fun and the joy, because I recently asked my community, I was going to make them 3 videos on topics of their choice out of the ones I gave them, which were all kind of related to kind of believing in yourself, confidence, things that make running better for you without being the competitive aspect. And the number one thing that they chose was positive self-talk. To me, that kind of made sense. But the number 2 thing they chose was finding joy in your running. And for me at first, I thought, wow, like, is that really what people want help with? Like that, it seems so crazy because yes, obviously we get that running inherently is not, oh, this is so fun, I'm just going to smile the whole time because it's just wonderful. Like we know running isn't that. It's, you know, it is it's uncomfortable, it's meant to be. But at the same time, the fact that people wanted to know how to find joy in their running, it kind of took me aback, because I was like, that is almost kind of a sad place that we have got ourselves to, that we have to be reminded how to find joy in something that is supposed to bring us joy, because for most of us, myself included, it is a leisurely activity. It's something you do for fun. So it really shocked me when I saw that, because I thought, wow, that should be the number one thing that everyone does think about. And I think now people are starting to realize that joy and fun, enjoyment should be the number one thing that we do, and realizing, actually, like myself, I was kind of hooked into the competitiveness, the got to be my best, the got to push myself to my limit thing. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, I think we had performance, yelled at us for so long. Every cover of every damn Runner's World magazine was get your best 5K, how to qualify for Boston, how to go the fastest you can. There's always speed, nonstop. It was drilled on you all the time. It was all about shoes and speed. That's all you ever heard. And finally, that craziness has started to abate, and the joy and just the participation has really surfaced. And to me, that was really what I was driving at with Born to Run. Like, one of the key revelations that Coach Joe Vigil had when he watched the Colorado run in Leadville was, geez, I'd never actually seen fast runners smile before. And that was the thing. His thing was, what makes these runners different than everybody else I've seen? And his one takeaway was, oh, these guys are actually enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And that's what he tried to capture. And I think part of the way he captured it, what he found was the reason why they're having fun is because they're sharing it. The difficulty with performance and competition is, by definition, you are separated from other people. You are running your best when other people are behind you. Mm-hmm. And joyfulness is about being in a community, being around people. And that's where I think people are starting to realize, what, I don't need to have my earbuds in, my Strava, turned on. I can just listen and talk and breathe easily.
Thank you to my dear friends at Body Health for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. I love their Perfect Amino tablets. In case I haven't made it really obvious, I use it for recovery, I use it for strength, I use it for endurance. Perfect Amino is just the perfect thing, as that word seems so right to match up, the perfect thing to use during my training. Now, you probably know that amino acids are the building blocks of proteins, and Perfect Amino contains the 8 essential amino acids that the body needs to support and maintain its systems. The essential amino acids in this Perfect Amino are in exact proportions we need for maximum utilization by the body. Now, we all know protein is important, but we aren't all the best at getting it in. I'm very guilty of that on this part. So we can get protein in food, but we're obviously not that good at it in many of our situations, mine especially. But your body also has to make some waste that the body has to get rid of when it is using that protein. And Body Health Perfect Amino is just made in a way that your body can just digest it, absorb it, use it, and it really is just a wonderful product. I've been using it for many years. I used it in my training years when I was training as an elite. I really found it made a massive difference in my recovery during heavy bouts of training. I used it when I was pregnant for the first time and this time. And I also used it during nursing because it helps with recovery and helps your body repair itself after the trauma of giving birth. It is very quickly absorbed. It is just made in a way that your body can, like I said, it can utilize 99% of Perfect Amino and those amino acids. It's going to get rid of inflammation for you. It's going to help you with muscle mass, which is really important as we are training hard. We are breaking those muscles down constantly and then repairing them. It's just a wonderful product. And if you have not already tried it, you can get 10% off your order by going to bodyhealth.com and using code TinaMuir10. You can also go to tinamuir.com/aminos. That's TINAMUIR.com/aminos. And that will put you through to my page, which has all the information you need, has that code already put in there. So it makes it nice and easy for you. There's a reason that I keep talking about Body Health over and over again. I believe in this product and I believe how much it can help you. I see how much it helps you, those of you who use it. So go check it out. Get 10% off your entire order by going to tinamuir.com/aminos.
That was really what I was driving at with Born to Run. Like one of the key revelations that Coach Joe Vigil had when he watched the Colorado run in Leadville was, geez, I'd never actually seen fast runners smile before. And that was the thing. His thing was, what makes these runners different than everybody else I've seen? And his one takeaway was, oh, these guys are actually enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And that's what he tried to capture. And I think part of the way he captured it, what he found was the reason why they're having fun is because they're sharing it. You know, the difficulty with performance and competition is, by definition, you are separated from other people. You know, you are running your best when other people are behind you. Mm-hmm. And joyfulness is about being in a community, being around people. And that's where I think people are starting to realize, you know what, I don't need to have my earbuds in, my Strava, turned on. I can just listen and talk and breathe easily. That was Arthur Lydiard's thing. Arthur Lydiard said, 90% of your running should be at a conversational pace, meaning you should be talking to somebody while you're running.
Yep. Yep. And I think that's one of the maybe problems of our busy, go life, which you have probably escaped. Well, I guess when you're not on a touring book tour season, even on tour,
yeah. I schedule as many group runs as possible.
Okay,
I actually tell you, I don't think I run alone anytime on tour. I always have some group I'm plunged into.
Although I would say Chris McDougall can probably, attract people to run with at any point. I would say maybe the average person may have a little more trouble finding running partners all the time. But I think also it is partly that our lives, people have, I'm just as guilty of this. I have 1 hour I can run. I'm going right now. It's time to go, get out the door, go. And, I can be guilty of putting in headphones just to kind of distract the time away. And sometimes I finish and I think, why did I do that? Or maybe something, I can't hear my music because there's a truck going by and I turn it off. Or I actually don't listen to music, but podcasts. I'll turn it off and then I'll leave it off for a few minutes and I'll think, actually, you know what? This feels better than when I was just slugging along, listening to a podcast for the sake of listening to a podcast. So yeah, I think it is good to have that reminder. And thank you for being that reminder that we don't necessarily need to be listening to things, because it does make a huge difference when you can listen to what's going on around you. You can listen to what's going on internally, and you can, just kind of appreciate the ability to be out there. So you said about the running climate changing. I mentioned in that initial thing when I was rambling, I should say, that how do you think the book would have gone down 4 years ago, 5 years ago? Do you think people would have resonated with it or kind of just chuckled?
So when I was working on Born to Run, the running bookshelf in the library was pretty thin. There really weren't many books about running. And the ones that were out there were all kind of the same thing. It was all kind of how-to stuff, like how to not get chafed, how to buy the right shoes. And so the only adventure book about running was Ultramarathon Man. That was the first time we got a glimpse of oh, hey, you know what? This dude actually seemed pretty happy. He's literally rolling up a pizza in a tube and eating the whole thing while he's running. And there'd never been a story like Dean Karnazes' adventures prior to Ultramarathon Man. And so, but the question was, but boy, could you do something else? Another kind of adventure story. And so when I wrote Born to Run, I really didn't know what was going to happen. Natural Born Heroes. Hey, can you actually do a modern adventure about World War II? So that was an experiment. And now with Running with Sherman, same thing. Even now, even 4 years earlier, I'm not even sure how people are reacting now because the book's only been out for a couple of weeks. The reaction's been really good. People really seem to dig it. But time will tell whether this message is going to land or not.
Yeah, yeah. And do you feel any pressure, like having come from someone who did have this, incredible book of Born to Run that people, what was it, Amazon's 100 books to read in your lifetime or something along those lines? Do you ever feel any pressure as an author to, have to kind of keep coming up with something that's going to impress people? Or for you, is it, of course, you realize you have to, make your publisher happy and get paid somehow, but is it more about kind of the purpose for you, what it represents, that it's true to who you are?
Yeah, I think writing is also similar to running in a way that whatever you feel at the beginning, there gets to be a certain point where you're just fighting your individual fight and all those other considerations are gone. So no matter what you start at the beginning of a marathon, wherever you feel, by mile 14, you're basically inside your own little cave. You're doing your own thing at that point. It doesn't matter what other people's expectations are. And it's like that with writing a book. It's basically a 2-year process. So you have an idea, you start to ponder it, you start to flesh it out, you try and see what the horizons for this story are. And then by the time you lock into it, at least for me, I'm basically on my own. I'm not around people. I have almost no social media presence when I'm working on a book. So it's just me and my thoughts out here in the middle of nowhere. And so the pressure dissolves pretty fast. And then it becomes a matter of just trying to finish building the house, and trying to get those blocks lined up and getting the lumber together. That's all. The job just takes over and the outside considerations just disappear.
And, we hear people talking about writing a book. You've said that the pressure, thankfully, is not something you have to worry about once you kind of get into it. And especially being locked away from everyone, you're kind of in your own space and your own head. But what is something that is difficult? Because we hear how tough writing a book actually is. And unless the process is 100% enjoyable for you, what are some things that you do struggle with during that, 2-year process? Because that's quite a long time.
Yeah, it is a long time. I think, the struggle comes from, like training an animal. The struggle comes from developing your toolkit, because as you're working in a book, you're going to come across things you want to express and you don't know how to express it, or information or research you want to include and you're not sure how to do it. And so it's not that the writing gets any easier. It's just that you start to develop more tools and techniques at your disposal, so that as you're working on telling this very long story, you've got a couple tricks up your sleeve you can use. And those only happen over time. So each book has got a little bit easier for me when I encounter a challenge. I got to figure it out. Now I figured it out. I can use that again next time. That's basically it. But for me, I kind of, not so much I enjoy it, but to me, it's a really agreeable lifestyle. It really matches the way I want to live, because I think my ADHD is off the charts. I can't sit still during the day. And so what writing does is lets me run around like a maniac all day and do chores and work on the farm. And then when 8 o'clock at night, my body settles down and my brain can kick in and I can work for a few hours. And I can also indulge all my curiosity, anything I'm curious about. I heard about a woman up in Michigan who trains zebras to pull little carts. So I ended up flying up to Michigan and watching Timmy Ann train her racing zebras. So things like that. So for me, that's what it works. So I guess the advice is that let your curiosity go, and then just develop a system that really matches your own natural kind of lifestyle and temperament.
Mm-hmm. I think that can apply to most things in life. So thank you for that advice. All right. One more question I have from, actually, this was Sally again, who wants to know, why is it important for animals and humans to have a purpose in their life? And then she said, going to work is a purpose, but then so many people have a goal of retiring and basically doing nothing, or maybe golfing every day. Is improving your handicap a purpose, or does it need to be something deeper? So talk to us about purpose, within humans, kind of this relates to what you're saying, and also within the animals that you see.
I think a better word than purpose might be craft. Some skill, something you're trying to perfect. And, I had this cool experience where, I've been told this, that, we had to find a purpose for this donkey. Every animal needs a purpose. And then I wanted to sort of double check that. So I went out to talk to Alexandra Horowitz, the Fordham professor who specializes in, specializes in dog psychology, canine psychology. And I asked her the same question. And she says, yeah, think about this. Every creature in the wild, when they open their eyes in the morning, the first thing they think of is what they have to do. I got to go find some food. I got to nurse these pups. I got to get to shelter. There's something you got to do. Yeah. And there's a skill that's required to accomplish that. And it's kind of like us when we're at our best. Like when you were training for a marathon, when you're 2 months out, I'm sure you would wake up in the morning, you'd open your eyes and your first thought is like, okay, here's what I got to do today. I got to eat by 7 in order to I'll be ready by 9. I got to be in bed for a nap by 2. So the skill set you needed is flashing across your brain. But rather than feeling an obligation, it felt exciting, like you felt like, okay, now my day's mapped out for me, the things I need to do, and I know how to do them.
Yep.
And so I think that's true. I think that every creature, if it's a salmon or it's a zebra or a puma or a stenographer, you wake up and you think, all right, here's how I'm going to be at my best today. And so, working on your handicap for golf, if God forbid, for some reason, that hideous sport appeals to you, then, then,
I'm not a golfer, but I'm sure there are quite a lot of golf fans listening right now.
Well, there shouldn't be. So just stop it right now. All you. But if that's your thing, then it's cool if your desires and your craft match up. So when you wake up in the morning, you think, okay, bam, my day's laid out because this is how I'm going to get better at this thing.
Right. Okay, cool. Thank you for explaining that like that. I have never had that explained like that way, but that definitely makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that.
I never actually explained it that way. It just occurred to me for the first time. So
no, that really makes a ton of sense. And actually, that's purpose is kind of an ongoing discussion right now. But the way you worded that just answers, pretty much. I mean, I'm going to have to kind of try and recall that in future when I get asked about that. So thank you for explaining that. And I hope you go on to use that because that really is something that, is smart and makes sense and is understandable. The analogy was good. So yeah, really good there. All right.
Thank you.
Before we get on to the final questions here, what is next? Actually, when I last talked to you, you said that you were, in 2015, you said you were thinking about writing a book about running with donkeys, about burro racing. So I don't know if that had just popped into your head or what, but I remember you saying it specifically. So does that mean at this point you already kind of maybe have the inkling of what you're thinking about, or are you just kind of really taking in this experience, kind of allowing yourself to celebrate the accomplishment of finishing another book and getting to do a book tour and kind of talk about it and take Sherman with you?
It's funny. Maybe we're not spacing our talks too far apart. Maybe our cycle is perfect because we can almost have exactly the same conversation now because I'm in exactly the same phase I was in the last time we spoke. I finished that book. I've already started work on another one, and I'm just in kind of the early phase. But basically, I know what the book is. I've already done the proposal, and I'm off to the races. And I'm actually going to start this week. I just got home from a 2-month book tour on Saturday. So today's Monday, my first sort of boots on the ground day at home. But basically the book I'm working on now is looking at that same topic about competition, whether competition is more harmful than helpful. And I'm looking at a specific story about 2 guys that I know who are best friends, but are like completely astral opposites when it comes to their approach to competition. And yet the guy who's non-competitive outperforms the guy who's hyper competitive. And so I'm looking at that dynamic, and exactly the kind of thing we're talking about is what's the breaking point when pushing becomes breaking, when pushing becomes too much. This is the point that you hit, So that's what I'm working on. And I'm just starting now, the same way I was last time we talked.
Oh, I cannot wait to read that. This is definitely a topic, as the fact I brought this up in the episode, that is very close to my heart. I have thought a lot about it. And I honestly think if I do decide to kind of go back to where I would be curious and see where things went, I honestly think I would do better because of not having that, I have to get this done, I have to do this in this time, and I have to get 8 hours sleep, and I have to do this, and like really intense kind of mindset I had towards things. Like, I'm going to prove I'm the toughest one out there. And then thinking about how, stressed I was, how unhappy I was, how much I struggled with insomnia, and the difference now. I really, I don't, like, people often ask me if I want to go back to competitive running. Right now, I have no interest because that's the only world I knew, was that competitive fight as hard as you can with everything you have mindset. I don't know this other kind of more calm, coming at it from I'm just out here to enjoy myself and see what happens perspective. So really interesting topic. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
I'm really curious. I'm going to catch up with Kara Goucher. So she's started running trails now.
Yeah.
And just did her first 50K. And, I always thought of her as kind of a hard-edged person. And there's a real happiness that comes off her now.
Yeah.
Every time I read about her online, she seems super happy.
Yeah, for sure. She definitely is in the right place right now.
And who was more competitive than her and Shalane Flanagan? Like nobody, in the U.S. was pushed harder than those two. Mm-hmm. And now I've never seen this kind of glow off her that seems to be happening now.
For sure. Yeah, she's the perfect example of this. Well, I cannot wait to see more of it. Let's get on to these final 4 questions. One piece of advice you would like to give the listeners for their life? The way they live their life.
Yeah. Slow down, look around. Slow down. Yep. In every aspect.
Which is surprisingly difficult.
It's surprisingly difficult, but running with the donkeys, a lot of times you're forced to slow down. They're futzing around. They're not doing what you want. You have to slow down. And yet you finish those runs. Boy, that was the best run of all. I went slower than I wanted. It took me 2 hours to do 10 miles. Yeah. But I feel really good. So slow down, look around.
Okay, love that. All right, one person, even though you've said you got on and off this, one person to follow on social media and why?
Oh, Jenna Woganrich. And Jenna, her last name Woginrich.
Okay.
I wrote a story about her for the New York Times about her falconry. She hunts with a hawk. But online, she's just like quick and quippy and salty and funny as hell and super smart.
Okay, perfect. All right, great. Thanks for that. All right, a running for real moment, something that only runners will understand.
A running surreal or for real moment that
for
only
real.
runners understand.
So just something that only runners understand.
It always has to do with using the bathroom, doesn't it?
It does. It like 80% of these always end up being about the bathroom.
Yeah, I wish I could avoid that. What am I going to do? It does not involve the only runners understand. I just circling back to dumping in the woods. It's just there's some joyfulness and freedom.
Well, that can be your one. You kind of muttered it under your breath, but we still heard it. So if you want that to be the one, you can go ahead with that.
Let it go.
Well, I always bring this up, but you mentioned Dean earlier, Dean Karnazes. The first time I had him on my show, I was really nervous that he was going to be very, put together. He would have these cookie cutter answers. He would, just be like a showman. And then sure enough, Dean starts talking about pooping behind an olive bush. And I was like, okay, I've obviously cracked down through that shell. So if Dean Karnazes talks about pooping behind an olive bush, I think you're okay to do that too.
We're in mutual ground.
Yes.
I'm among the greats.
Yeah, well, I would argue that you two are right up there together, but yes, he also did talk about that. All right, and what do you tell yourself before you're going on to do, a big talk, or if you were going to race? What's the last thing you say to yourself?
Well, here's the thing. This is kind of a long answer, and I'm not sure if it's profound or idiotic, but I'll float it out there. So I was in the UK on book tour, and I had an event at Run and Become Books. And it was on the other side of Hyde Park. I was staying in Paddington, and I had to run across Hyde Park to get to Run and Become a running shoe store. Mm-hmm. And so I blaze out, and I'm running through the park, and Hyde Park seems easy. And then you're following trails, and they're going in weird directions. Yep. Like, where the crap am I? And then I'm thinking, man, do they close these gates when it gets dark? Because I saw signs, things close at dark. I'm like, am I going to be scaling a 40-foot fence? And I'm getting stressed. And at one point I said, dude, take a breath, man. The sun is setting. You're in London. You go into a place where people like you. How are you turning this into a negative experience? Yes. So I had this revelation, which is that every run, when you start the run, is perfect. When you start, it's perfect. And then all you can do from that point on is either keep it perfect or make it suck. Mm-hmm. And it's up to you. So if you start the run and you're feeling stiff, we'll just slow down a little bit. Like relax, bring it back to perfect again. And you can always do it, but it depends on what your expectations are.
Oh, so
and that's
good.
what I had to do in that moment. So my thought was, okay, the run, when this started tonight in Hyde Park, it was perfect. And then I started to stress and run around and get nervous. And I said, take a breath. If you're late, you're late. If you got to go to a second gate, so be it. Keep the run perfect. Don't let it deteriorate.
That's so good. And that can be applied in so many ways with even just I've had so many runs lately where I felt just so exhausted. And from a few steps in, I'm like, oh, here I go. I feel tired again. And there I go, straight down, ruined it. Rather than just kind of, like you said, slow down or, do something, take a break, take a walk break if you need to just bring it back to actually, like again, that enjoyment or just bring it back to perfect, like you said. Thank you. I love that. That is profound, I would say. And just for everyone's curiosity's sake, you did make it to your event on time, or you made it to your event.
I was late, but it never matters. It doesn't matter. People in a running shoe store, they're going to find things to do. They're going to look at new tank tops and stuff. So that was it. I was building stress where there didn't need to be. Everything's fine. Mm-hmm. Everything will always be fine. Just relax. Enjoy this, because your stress is not going to make the outcome any different. So,
That's
make it perfect and go from there.
Love that. Thank you so much. All right, Chris, tell us where people can find the book, where people can follow you, and, any other, your website, if you want to give it, anything else that you want people to know.
Yeah, so for sure. The book is everywhere. In particular, if you have an independent bookstore in your community, go there, because it's been the indie booksellers that have really been championing my books from the beginning. Born to Run was unknown. It was unreviewed. It was completely a forgotten book until independent booksellers began to hand sell it. And that's what made Born to Run take off. Cool. And what I've been finding with Running with Sherman, same thing. Independent bookstores, they're out and proud of pushing this book. So indie bookstores, you can find me online, like chrismcdougall.com, and basically go from there, and you'll find me popping up all over the place.
Mm-hmm. And just, I should have asked you this earlier, but Running with Sherman, we've kind of given the gist of it, that it is about your kind of adventure of learning to run with Sherman. But who would you say this book is for, or what kind of, I just want to mention this because it's not just like, here's how to run with donkeys. Tell us about what it is beyond that.
It's a full-on adventure story. I think if anybody enjoyed Born to Run, this is the same kind of rollicking adventure story with a lot of ingrained history, physiology, anatomy built in as well. So there's a lot of, for instance, I wrote a good bit about our local Amish ultramarathoning team. We have a bunch of Amish men and women out here that quietly have their own ultra team and do a full moon run every month. So I get into little side stories like that reveal hopefully a lot more. But basically, look, if you like Born to Run and you like animals, this is it, man. Buy it in bulk.
Thank you so much, and perfect timing with Christmas coming up. So you guys go get yourself a copy or get one for a loved one. All right, thank you so much for your time, for your just opening your heart, for your wisdom. We really appreciate you, and look forward to hearing about what's coming next.
For sure, Tina. Let's try and make it a little bit quicker than 4 years next time.
Yes, I agree.
Let's get them 2 years. Yeah. But thanks a lot for giving me the chance to talk to you.
Love that. My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. Isn't he awesome? I just love him. I just love the conversation there. It got me thinking a lot. And what about saying that each run starts perfect? That is so true. And after Chris and I had that conversation, I just started to think about my runs in that way. Whenever I started feeling tired from pregnancy, I thought, you know what? Every run is perfect. If I don't feel good, slow down. And so I would. And I have to say, it is making a big difference. So I want to thank Chris for that. And I really hope you did enjoy that episode. Now, next week, I have my episode with Max King and James McCurdy. And we recorded this at CIM. Actually, I've not recorded it at the time of recording this, but I will have had the podcast by the time this comes out. And I am looking forward to hearing your thoughts about this great conversation. And you may think those are two very random people, but I decided to kind of look at it as coming to a marathon from different perspectives. So you have Max King, who is this ultra runner, incredible ultra runner, coming at this from kind of more of a trail ultra background. And then James McCurdy is primarily working with everyday people who are out there with their 9-to-5 job and squeezing training in. So I thought that would be a really interesting conversation, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on that. I want to take a quick moment to thank Janji, Athletic Greens and Body Health for sponsoring this episode. Be sure to go check those out. You can get 10% off at janji.com using code TinaMuir. You can go to athleticgreens.com/Tina to get a free 20-pack worth $79 of Athletic Greens with your order. Don't let yourself get sick before your big race. This is one way to stop it, I promise you. And thank you to Body Health. You can get 10% off your entire order. I've been talking about them for years. Perfect Amino has kept me healthy. If you are not the best at getting in your recovery fuel, or just kind of tend to get run down or have injuries or recovering from something, anything, Body Health Perfect Amino is going to help you. So thank you to those guys. You can find everything you need in the show notes at tinamuir.com/episode 163. And I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.